You might be wondering what all of these images have in common. Well, what they have in common is each one of them reproduces sexually. What is sexual reproduction? When we think of sexual reproduction, we usually think of it involving two individuals, a male and a female. However, this isn't always the case, as it is with humans and other mammals. Plants and coral also reproduce sexually, something we probably don't think of often. Sexual reproduction in plants and animals is the union of two sex cells to produce a new individual. These sex cells are called gametes. Gametes and sex cells the word will be used interchangeably throughout the video. Sex cells in females are called eggs, or ova, and sex cells in males are called sperm. It must be easy being a sex cell because they only have one job: find another sex cell. The union of two sex cells during mating is called fertilization. Most animal and flower plants reproduce sexually. Because two different sex cells have come together, the new individual will have a mixture of traits from both parents. This is important for biological diversity. Remember when we talked about asexual reproduction, one of its downfalls was that all the offspring are identical to the parent. If something was negative happened to the parent, it would also negatively affect the offspring. Biological diversity helps prevent this. During sexual reproduction, cells undergo a process called meiosis. It's similar to mitosis, but meiosis undergoes two divisions. So if we recall, in interphase, during mitosis, chromosomes duplicate and condense. That's what's happening here. The chromosome is made up of two identical copies of DNA. That's why asexually, the parent is always the same as the offspring. In prophase, the mitotic spindles form, and in metaphase, the chromosomes double up, and the doubled up chromosomes line up in the middle of the cell. During anaphase, the mitotic spindles pull apart the chromosomes, and two sets of chromosomes are identical with the same genetic makeup. In telophase, the separated chromosomes arrive at opposite ends of the cell and a new nuclear envelope develops. And then our process is going to happen all over again. During meiosis, the parent cell goes through interphase where the chromosomes are duplicated. In the first cell division, the chromosomes pair up, but only one of each pair goes to each daughter cell. So one of this chromosome is going to go in here, and the other one's going to go here. One of the dark blue is going here, the other one's going here. Therefore, each cell has only half the number of chromosomes of the parent cell. In the second division, those daughter cells each divide again without duplicating their chromosomes. So here, gotta go back. So we can see here that they've divided again, but they did not duplicate. So we're left with one cell, or one chromosome in each cell. The result of this is 4 daughter cells, with half the number of chromosomes as the parent cell. So mitosis ends with 2 cells, and meiosis ends with 4. Mitosis also ends with two chromosomes in each cell, whereas meiosis only ends up with 1 chromosome in each cell. And mitosis undergoes 1 division, where meiosis undergoes 2 cell divisions. So sexual reproduction in animals is when 2 gametes join. When 2 gametes join, they create a single cell called a zygote. The zygote has a full set of chromosomes and is the first cell of a new individual. But the zygote doesn't stay single for long. It begins to divide into two cells in a process called cleavage. A new multicellular life form develops called an embryo, and this whole time the mitotic division continues to occur. So here we have an image of sexual reproduction from fertilization to embryo development. So we start off with our single cell, our sex cell, and the male and the female joining, the creation of a zygote, which begins cleavage, where our cells are dividing until we have the creation of a multicellular embryo. Depending on the species, the embryo might develop inside the female parent or outside in an egg. Male and female gametes unite to form a zygote. Gametes are haploid, which means they have half the number of chromosomes of a normal cell. If a sex cell had the same number of chromosomes as every other cell, and if the gametes were diploid, what do you think would happen? The zygote would inherit twice as many chromosomes as needed. An incorrect number of chromosomes can cause problems with normal cell growth and function. Here are two images of chromosomes. This here is a printout of the chromosomes and the different patterns that you can see through the different colors. Hermaphrodites. Hermaphrodites are pretty cool animals. Most animals that we can think of have distinct sexes, meaning individuals are either male or female. However, some animals are hermaphrodites, which can produce both male and female gametes, so both female and male sex cells. Examples of hermaphrodites are common garden worms and slugs. A cool thing about hermaphrodites is in a time of environmental stress, they can fertilize themselves, though this isn't usual. Sequential hermaphrodites are pretty cool too. They are born one sex, but become the opposite sex later in life. An example of this is the clownfish. So clownfish travel in packs that consist of a large reproductive female, a smaller reproductive male, and numerous non-reproductive males. If the female dies or leaves, the reproductive male becomes the female, and the biggest non-reproductive male becomes the new reproductive male. Which leads me to this. What is wrong with this picture? Take a minute, think about it. I'm going to ask you tomorrow or Monday. So moving on to sexual reproduction in plants. Just like in animals, sexual reproduction in plants requires the joining of a male gamete with a female gamete to produce a zygote and an embryo. Most plants produce male and female gametes, but others only produce one or the other. Here we have a diagram of a flower going in its sexual reproduction parts. Pollen contains the male sex cells, and this is found in the stamen. So these two pieces are the male reproductive. Ovules contain the female gametes, right here, and are found in the pistil. If a male and female gamete are found in the same plant, how does it reproduce? Well, when pollination occurs, when pollen is transferred from the anther of a stamen, so right here, to the stigma of the pistil, right there. In self-pollination, The transfer of sex cells is within the same plant. In cross-pollination, the pollen from one plant is carried to the stigma of another plant by the wind, water, or animals such as bees and butterflies. A grain of pollen produces a long tube that eventually goes down the style, right down there, into the ovary that contains the ovules. A gamete in a pollen grain and a gamete in the ovule join, and just like in animals, a zygote is formed. The zygote begins cell divisions to produce an embryo. The embryo will eventually develop into a new individual with a protective covering. This is a seed. The seed can stay dormant until conditions for it are favorable to grow. Like in an animal, a plant produced from cross-pollination will have characteristics of both plants. And just like asexual reproduction, sexual reproduction has its advantages and disadvantages. The main advantage of sexual reproduction is the variation. When we have the crossover of traits from parent to parent, we can have variation in the new offspring, which can eventually lead to survival if the environment changes. So if a plant that is more, after cross-pollination, is more suitable to colder climates, and our climate is eventually changing, that flower will have the better chance to reproduce in the future, and then its offsprings will have its characteristics that are favorable to it. The disadvantages are that gamete production takes a lot of energy. The gametes have to meet. So this is difficult in, say, like plants, where it depends on the wind or other sources, and the joining of the gametes isn't guaranteed. Another downfall is that the embryo must be protected and developed during development. This is the most severe in cases where mammals and humans, where the embryo is developed inside the female. And because of the amount of energy and time it takes for sexual reproduction, the offspring are limited in number. Some organisms can reproduce both sexually and asexually. We've already talked about flowers and aphids, but another species is jellyfish. Jellyfish can alternate between asexual and sexual reproduction. So jellyfish, the male and females will release eggs and sperm. They will join and form a larvae. So this is our sexual reproduction. The larvae eventually settle on hard surfaces like on the bottom of rocks or the bottom of just things lying on the bottom of the ocean. And they begin to mature into polypus. This is where the asexual reproduction occurs. Eventually it produces more and more and more, and it separates into mature jellyfish. Sorry, the phone rang there. But that's pretty much it for sexual reproduction. Have a good weekend. I'm going to attach a link to this email if you want to learn more about jellyfish and how awesome they are.